Hello, and welcome to the Wine Enthusiast podcast, your serving of wine trends and passionate people beyond the bottle. I'm Lauren Buzzio, the managing editor here at Wine Enthusiast, and in this episode, number 3 of our 40 Under 40 series for 2020, we're exploring new spaces in the wine and drinks landscape. So far, without doubt, it's been a crazy year for the world, with challenges that have resulted in monumental change in so many areas. The wine, drinks, and hospitality worlds have certainly not been immune to those shifts. And in these trying times, it's worth considering where some overdue change has come, and new and unique positive opportunities have arisen and been formed. In exploring that idea, we speak with two of this year's 40 Under 40 tastemakers, Cristie Norman and Will Blackmon, about how they've set new courses and found unique and authentic ways to support the wine community through sharing their passions, connecting with peers, and bringing a new audience of consumers into the beautiful, varied, and delicious world of wine. We are here today discussing new ground and current opportunities in the evolving and rapidly shifting world of wine and drinks and hospitality. And I have the enormous pleasure of being joined with one of our 40 Under 40 of 2020, Cristie Norman. Cristie, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you so much for having me, Lauren. I really appreciate the opportunity.
Totally. So when we were talking about this topic for this podcast episode and considering the new ground and again new opportunities that have come up as a result of this somewhat chaotic year that we've all faced so far, certainly your name popped immediately to mind.
Yeah, it's been quite a year, that's for sure. We've been really busy with the USF team for sure.
Definitely. So there's been a lot of change and a lot of again sort of chaos and new frontiers that we've all experienced in the world of wine and certainly in the hospitality industry. So you started off this year working as a sommelier at Spago in Beverly Hills. Certainly that must have shifted pretty rapidly come late February, early March. Just tell me a little bit about what that initial transition period was like for you and what you experienced from a sommelier in the hospitality aspect.
Yeah, well, I've been on the wine team for about 4.5 years. So I've seen it through every season, high and low. I mean, we're always almost fully booked all the time. And there was a really sudden drop off in February because, a big part of our clientele are, very wealthy tourists. Obviously, the Beverly Hills crowd, which tends to be a little bit on the older side, our regulars and whatnot. And, end of February, it just really started getting slow. Like I've never seen it before. And I'm one of 4 people on the wine team. I have an online business. And so I've been there part time for the past 2 years. And, just very fairly, I didn't have shifts because we were slow. It's just how the restaurant industry works, right? You just have to ebb and flow with it. I realized really quickly as a floor somm myself, I'm somebody that works the floor. I'm not on salary on the management side. I was the first to be cut and I realized that I would be the last to be brought back. And unfortunately, a lot of people think that sommeliers are, these really rich people that drink fancy wines all the time, but that's really not the case. I mean, a lot of them are tipped out just like servers are. They work short shifts and some wine directors do make a lot of money, but there's also a large part of the wine community, especially those floor somms, those up and coming people that aspire to be wine directors, that more or less work like a server. And unfortunately, when the higher ups see the bottom line of somebody who's on the wine team, it seems expendable to a lot of teams, and I saw that very early. And Chris Blanchard, who is a master sommelier. He's with Vine Hill Ranch in Napa. He and I actually were putting on a master class. I run master classes and tasting group at Spago for the last 3 years. And we had this giant class. It was so amazing. We had it planned for months. We were going to do old Vine Hill Ranch plantings, like dating back to the 70s. And it was, we were so excited. We had about 45 people RSVP'd for the class. And this was slated to be on Monday, March 16th,
Ugh.
which was the day before, it was the day after that restaurants closed.
Yeah.
And so I had to cancel the class at 2 a.m.
Oh,
And Chris and I obviously were in close contact, and we've been friends for a few years. And, he just texted me one night and said, I want to do something. Can we help the Psalm community? What are we going to do? And I said, all right, like, let me make some phone calls. And so I called Eric Siegelbaum in DC and John McDaniel in Chicago, Eric Crane, in Georgia, Yannick Benjamin in New York, like these just really great, very knowledgeable and well-connected people. Jackson Rohrbaugh, and of course, oh my gosh, Jeff Labitska, MW with Kistler and Sonoma, and we just formed this team, and we started as a GoFundMe, and we transitioned and filed for our 501c3 charity status because we realized that this is going to be something that affects our community for a very long time. And our definition of a sommelier for our organization is someone who self-identifies as a sommelier. So it's not like we only will support people that are working in the restaurant. There have been plenty of people that work in tasting rooms and distributors, people that are in distribution rather, that have gotten funding, and people can apply for financial grants through our program, and it has been very, very successful. I remember the first 2 weeks we had about $6,000 or something in the GoFundMe, and then all of a sudden, Co-Brand was the first really big donation in April, and they donated $100,000, which was absolutely amazing. Skurnik, they've raised, I think, $50,000 or more. And we did a really large auction with Acker, which has just been rolling. I think we raised over $300,000 just in the first auction with all of the support from the wineries, especially in Napa and Sonoma, and we just had a huge amount of community support. And unfortunately, again, this is going to be going on for a very long time, and we realized that all of these psalms it was bad at first, but now restaurants are closing permanently. The jobs are being eliminated permanently, and being so close to the wine and psalm community in Los Angeles, I really see it firsthand because everybody tells me when they need a job, or when something happens, they come to me because I talk to a lot of people and they know that I might hear something, and I always try to find something for them. And so, just seeing how many restaurants have been closing, it's been really devastating for everybody. But and it took literally an entire month of working just to ratify a completely blind voting process to select these candidates, because we didn't want there to be any sort of bias. We didn't want people to think, oh, I chose somebody because, they're in LA and I know them. So we actually have one person who is outside of the wine industry, and she anonymizes every single application. So we don't see their name, their location, anything about them in their essay gets redacted that could possibly be an indication of where they are.
wow.
Because and just ratifying that process alone took 2 weeks, with
Sure.
our process. And we just launched the Grand Cru grant program, which is essentially giving an additional grant to people who got a grant at the beginning, because again, things changed and we needed an update. So they can fill out a survey that will, that's optional, of course, and they can provide details about, things that have evolved,
Yeah.
and they can get up to $2,500 paid directly to their creditors to pay their mortgage, to pay their car payments, stuff like that.
Wow.
Yeah, and but we're trying to get the money our motto kind of is to get the money out as quickly as we possibly can. Like, we don't want to have it in the bank account. And we are fortunate right now, even though we're in a pandemic, we were able to raise a lot of money through some amazing partnerships with and people that really care. I mean, we really saw who showed up for us, especially at the beginning when we were just starting.
Yeah.
And yeah, and we want to help as many people as possible, so we're just trying to urgently raise as much money as possible to just get it out there, because we want to retain these amazing sommeliers that have worked for so long in our industry. And people are already starting to go in other directions, take other jobs and stuff like that. And we also want people to know that there are somms and wine industry people that care. And this is an ecosystem. And just like, we've supported some of our favorite brands for a long time, like this is a moment when they can show up for us. So we're just giving them that opportunity, and a lot of people are taking it.
And I think that it's amazing that you're paying attention to how you can evolve this foundation as well as the needs, either remain the same or change or extend themselves, if you will, with that grand crew. That you're finding other opportunities to provide more support to the community. So the foundation has raised currently over $800,000. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
That's
correct.
amazing. And distributed funds to more than 750 sommeliers in need.
Yeah, and hoping to do more this weekend. Like, we're ready. We're ready. It's amazing because, some of these huge foundations like the USBG, at the beginning of the pandemic when they were just getting millions of dollars and they had millions of applications. I can't even imagine doing that.
No.
It's amazing, and we're learning and growing as we go. We really didn't have a blueprint for this at all, and so we're just kind of making things up. But our turnaround time is about 3 to 4 weeks. And we're trying to get that as short as we possibly can so that the applicants hear back, because a lot of these big foundations and grants and stuff, you hear back 5, 6, 7 weeks later. So we're
Sure.
trying as hard as we can to get funds to people.
So
So
this must have essentially become your new full-time job, yeah?
absolutely. I'm not, none of the board members take any pay. This is all completely on a volunteer basis. But yeah, at the beginning, we were all working, 40 to 60 hours a week on the foundation just to get it up and running. Now it's a little bit more self sustaining, as word of mouth grows. And obviously, all of these people that get money, they're sharing on their own platforms or in their personal lives. And so, we have people kind of coming out of the woodwork saying, "Hey, we want to partner with you guys. Can we donate to you guys?" Which has been absolutely wonderful. We did, and the thing that I saw in the wine industry at the beginning of this pandemic is that we really didn't have an infrastructure and support system for our wine community. And I'm not saying that the USF, the United Sommeliers Foundation, can change all of that or change it overnight. But there's a lot of holes and gaps where we don't have any support for other things. And, as people, we have so many educational resources, we have so many scholarships for trips, but like, I don't need a trip to Spain right now.
Yeah.
People need money for their children, for their medical bills. People that are in dire need, that's who we're trying to support right now.
And I think that that somewhat speaks to that disconnect between the public and the sommelier community, knowing the reality of their situations, that it appears like a very glamorous and potentially luxurious position that sommeliers may be in. And sure, there are undoubtedly perks, whether you're talking about, informational experiential travel or being able to taste wines either by visiting wineries or with your clientele or whatever the case may be. But when you're coming down again to paying those bills and living your life, it's a very different story. And that disconnect sort of needs to be reconciled, and that community needs to come together to build that. And it's amazing that's what exactly the USF is showing to do.
Yeah, the tastes of Krug don't pay my rent, and it's really cool. I love tasting Krug. I would never turn it down, but also it just doesn't pay our bills. And, I think that we should not only care about somebody's education and all of that stuff, which obviously I'm very passionate about as well, but we need to take care of them as people and as humans, and to make sure that, they have resources to lots of different things, and to make it low cost or free, to get these opportunities and be connected to things. I think we have a lot of work to do. This is just the beginning.
Without a doubt. And of course, the pandemic and everything that we're facing globally has been horrible. But from our industry perspective, and again, when you're talking about new opportunities and areas of improvement, that there really can be new job creation and new consideration on how to move forward. Of this to me is a fantastic one that I think is long, long overdue.
Yeah, thank you so much. I
Yeah.
really appreciate it.
So you mentioned education. That's obviously another passion of yours, and that's definitely another important area about wine and drinks culture. But it's also, I think, a great opportunity right now for a lot of people to receive more education while we're all sort of sitting at home and not able to travel. And that's also a space that we've seen a lot of innovation and a lot of evolution in over the past year. Tell me a little bit about how you also got into that education space, what that means for you, and how you sort of came about creating this online wine course for beginners.
Yeah, well, since I was at Spago when I was 21 years old, and I realized that wine education and income were not proportionally linked. Like when you make a lot of money, somebody doesn't come down from the heavens and teach you everything about wine and tell you the difference between Pinot Noir and Cabernet. It's just not a thing. And I was talking to a billionaire, and he did not know that he said something about Chablis, and he thought it was a red, and I was like, oh my goodness, okay, so this is a pandemic on its own. This was years ago, right? Um, and I started making these low budget like comedy YouTube videos. It was like a mix of wine education and comedy. They're still up. They're called Adulting with Alcohol
Mhm.
online. You can watch them. And I wanted to teach these mini lessons to people, and I wanted to do it in a fun and funny way. And I kind of have my own kind of candor and style, and I'm kind of corny, but whatever. And some people resonate with it a lot. And so I did all these videos, and I realized that the wine industry really liked them. And but people that weren't in the wine industry didn't understand all of the terms that I was saying. And so it's like you can't fully get the jokes and stuff. And so what I realized is that I needed to put it together in a course to build somebody's vocabulary from the ground up. So I was saving for a house, and then I decided to spend all of my money that I have and borrow some to create this online wine course for beginners. It launched last year. It was great. We've had people in it's over 15 countries, more now, I think. I think that our introduction wine programs, they are great, and I'm not trying to be a certification. That's what people I don't think understand. Like, this is for somebody who doesn't know the difference between white and red wine, but it takes them all the way through everything that I think the average consumer should know, going out and eating and drinking and stuff like that. So it doesn't go into geeky winemaking things. It doesn't go into the details of the names of the yeast that we use, but we talk about things in a way to get them to understand it, and so that they can start shopping by region and by place instead of necessarily by brands. That's like the idea that I had. So in the first beginning part of the course, I talk about what is wine, how the differences between wines, and how to there's some terms and stuff like that, and then we go into the varieties and differences within those. And then the second half of the course is a country, and there's 16 different sections with 3 to 5 videos in each one. And the second half is each country with those varieties we already talked about, but in context of place and some of the history and some of the main things that you need to know about all of these regions. And then at the end, it's with food and wine pairing, and it gives people I have a very particular way that I like to pair food and wine. I have like a philosophy, so I teach that. And it's meant to inspire people to go off and learn more. That's the point. And it's to not be a snooty person. I don't think that wine needs to be really I don't know, bougie. And I'm speaking from somebody who has tasted all of the crazy wines and stuff like that, but I can enjoy Beaujolais on the floor out of a coffee mug as well. I don't think that wine should be that complicated. And yeah, there's a time and place for it to be bougie and elitist and whatever, but I think that my whole purpose was to increase the consumption of wine, because I see all these millennials and they're paying $22 for a cocktail, but they won't spend $100 on a bottle of wine shared between friends. And I think that's ridiculous,
Yeah.
And so my purpose is not to like replace a certification program in any way. It's just to be the bridge between that, because I think that's the hard part. It's how do you get this busser that really likes wine and wants to learn about it to taking his CMS or taking WSET or whatever. And I've had literally hundreds of people tell me that they have signed up for these programs, because my program is $150, and other programs are about 700 or more right now just for the intro level.
Yeah.
And so it gives people, it's enough skin in the game where they'll finish it, because it does take between 3 to 6 hours, and it's like, you have quizzes, there's an exam. It's a lot of work. It really is. There's a worksheet with every single video that you have to fill out. But so it's like enough money where they're in it, but also and they'll complete it. That's the thing. Like I wish I could give it away for free and have people finish it. I mean, actually, when the pandemic happened, I gave it for free for all hospitality professionals that were out of work, and I had like 7,000 people take it in a month and a half, and that was crazy. I didn't give them the certificate and pin that it comes with,
I think I
but
saw an
just
Instagram post during that
yeah,
time of, like, all the
yeah,
labels coming off that you needed to
it
ship
was
things out to.
crazy. Yeah, well, it's so funny. So my course comes with a little pen because one of my directors of education, he works at UCLA, and he was like, "Cristie, you need to give the kids something. You need to give them something tangible at the end." So I have a little wine course graduation pin that you can get, and I specifically said for all these people, all I did was share it in a couple Facebook groups, literally like 4 Facebook groups. I shared it in, and it was like thousands and thousands of people. And I there's this little pin, and I said specifically, I'm not shipping out certificates and pins. Like you get a certificate PDF like pop up when you finish anyway. But so many people wanted to buy it, and so I actually sent it. Did an offer for $10 plus shipping, and they sold out like literally in within like 2 hours,
Oh,
and
that's
then
awesome.
we just restocked. Yeah, no, it was cool. I mean, I wasn't really making that much money on it. It's fine, but it was just like fun that everybody wanted the pins to wear. But ultimately, like, my purpose with this is to serve millions of people. I would love to. I'm getting it dubbed in Spanish, getting it dubbed in Chinese. Like, I would love for a really large part of the population take this because they will like wine. There's so many people that take the course that don't know anything about wine, and then they text me a picture that they're buying Sauterne at the store. I'm like, how is this happening? That's so cool,
That is awesome.
yeah,
Yeah.
and I would love for more people to be doing something like this because as much as I speak to some people, there's, not, I don't speak to everybody. And I think that, I encourage people to get into the beginner wine space. Like, I do not want to monopolize this market. I think that that's an opportunity for lots of sommeliers right now to do beginner education and teach on their own and grow this consumer business because that's what we need right now. We want to increase the consumption of wine. We got to take the time and teach people, man. We don't do enough.
Exactly, and sommeliers are so knowledgeable. Of course, you're more than equipped to be able to provide this information and this service and empower people to make their own wine decisions with confidence through this accessible and approachable wine information for real people to start their own wine journeys and encourage them to dive even deeper after they take that first plunge. Like, I love it.
I just want people to not be afraid. People are just so scared to look at a wine list. And if all you need is some basic vocabulary,
Yeah.
it's not that hard, man. And then you'll learn as you go and you'll learn things you like and you don't like. But you always should know that just because you don't like one white wine doesn't mean, I say in the course, like, just because you don't like one type of apple or one type of pear doesn't mean that you throw out all fruits grown on trees, right?
Yeah.
Like, imagine, just imagine all the things you would never get to try if you had one bad apple that you didn't like and you just like, screw all the lemons and limes and, oranges. It'd be ridiculous. It would be ridiculous. So that's what I'm trying to get people to see.
I try to explain this to my 5-year-old son all the time, but he hasn't really quite picked up on it. But
All right,
but
start
again,
them early. It's good. It's good.
yeah, exactly. But I think that it is of note that this is an evolving space. I mean, you said yourself that this isn't an official accreditation or course, that has to be so stuffy and so serious and so expensive and therefore prohibitive and somewhat exclusionary to a lot of different people who can't afford those opportunities. But this is the space that we need to bring more consumers into wine in again an accessible and easygoing way for the enjoyment of it all.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, if this was a cash grab, I think I would have done things really differently. um, but I need to charge something for it so that people will actually finish it and be committed to it because it's really about, what they're going to put their energy on and focus on.
Yeah.
And I want people to value it, but it doesn't need to be outrageously expensive. It just doesn't. It just doesn't.
Mm.
The information is online. They could learn it themselves for free, honestly, but I just deliver it in a certain way that I think that is really conducive for somebody to absorb, and it allows you to like stop and start whenever you want so that if they need to take a break after the France section, dude, me too. Anytime it's a lot of words sometimes, and so it allows them to stop and take breaks and take notes and do the comprehension questions and stuff and really absorb it on their own schedule and their own time. So
For sure. And then I guess after you take that introductory course, or you've sort of, dove into the wine pool and you want to dive a little further, I think another area of education and exploration that I know that you're particularly passionate about is this sort of the idea of tasting groups and peer tastings. I know that you have your own tasting group model that you help locally with a lot of people. Tell me a little bit about that and what that means to you.
Yeah, well, kind of at the same time as I started the wine course, I realized that the Somm community in Los Angeles, because our city is so disjointed, it was very difficult to like get people together. And I was part of a really advanced, like people that were taking their master's, certification. I happened to get into their group as an intro, and I was just observing. And eventually they started to let me taste. And what I found was that, we do this thing called blind tasting, right? Where you have three white wines and three red wines. They're pre poured, you don't know what they are. And you taste each one, and you have 4 minutes and 10 seconds per wine to deduce what the wine is, where it's from, the vintage, all that stuff. And it's very difficult to learn how to do that. And I realized for myself, it took me a very long time to get it because I was with such advanced people that the basics weren't really broken down to me. And the advanced people kind of, not because they're exclusionary, they aren't, but it's just like if they're studying for something really hard, like obviously you don't want to have people that are far beneath you that are constantly asking questions if you're really seriously studying, right? It just makes sense. You want to study with people that are in your kind of your bracket of
Mm-hmm.
knowledge. And so I chose to create this tasting group at Spago. Spago generously let me host it there. And essentially, I would have uh, Psalms that would come in. If they were studying really seriously, they would come earlier in the day. And then I'd have a small group later in the afternoon for people who are just starting to learn, where we would discuss it. But ultimately, we would get one bottle of wine over, 10 to 13 people. And it was really great. It made it low cost for everybody because when I was going to tasting group back in the day, I was spending, 60 to $80 a week buying wines at retail, trying to bring something good. And I also didn't know what wines to bring. And so I thought it was really important to have somebody who's choosing the wines for these people and facilitating that kind of education and conversation. And so I started this group about 2.5 years ago with 8 people, and we do about one masterclass a month. And then we have blind tasting almost every single week, and it's grown to over 300 people that have come to our events, all sommeliers or wine directors, like people in the trade, that are there to increase their level of knowledge. We had, Ken Wright come down from the Willamette Valley, teach a Willamette Valley class. We
Nice.
had Scott Gould with Bond, did a Bond class. He donated like 30 bottles of Bond
Oof.
by Harlan. Yeah, because I had never tasted them side by side, and we were just chit chatting, and we had, like 65 people there, with wine directors and somms tasting these wines. It's a really cool experience. But when the pandemic hit, obviously at the very beginning, I was very busy with the United Sommeliers Foundation. But I decided to transition virtually. So I talked to a couple people. Jason at Wild Ginger up in Seattle, he gave me kind of a roadmap of the bottles on which to buy and how to do it, and the funnels that I needed and stuff like that. So essentially, I am siphoning one full 750 bottle into 11 and a half small, like 2-ounce bottles. And what that does is it allows me to have one mentor and 10 somms every single week for blind tasting.
Mm.
I actually I have like 700 or 800 bottles now
Oh,
that we've purchased, and it's all pay what you can. So I'm during this time, I didn't want I really started doing this not because people are that serious about their education right now, but because it's something that it's part of their identity. I found that, Psalms, like a lot of people were expressing to me that they were lost.
yeah.
And of course it is when you're not doing the thing that you've been doing for so long. And so, but I wanted to start tasting group again just to bring back that familiarity and that safety that knowing that they have their wine community. We're here, we're learning. And it's 25 minutes or an hour or whatever, that they don't have to be thinking about other things. They can just focus on the wine that's in the glass. And actually, it's been incredible because we've been doing it for about 20 weeks now. And some people just started at the beginning of the pandemic, and they have grown so much. It's amazing just to see how great they are at tasting. It's just mind blowing to me. And people are so much more consistent and dedicated, and they come, every Sunday. I have a little pickup time. I sit outside with an ice chest, and people come and pick up their wines from me. I'm dead serious. And then we had last week, Co-Brand donated $100,000 again. So I wanted to choose something from their book and do a master class. And so we had Olivia Olivier Umbrecht do a wines of Alsace class
Ugh,
through his wines, and we had 78 Soms with wines. So like 7 bottles of each, basically
wow.
78 Soms with wine, and we had another 40 or so just watching on the Zoom from all over the country, and it's been hugely successful. So we're adding lots of new master classes. My boss Philip, he's doing a how to run a profitable wine program class, because Philip is an incredibly successful person, not only as a sommelier but also just how he structures things, and he really knows the business and how to make money. And so I asked him if he would do like a free webinar, and he's like, absolutely, let's do it. And so we had about 3 times as many people as like sign up as we can host in the class. So we're going to have to do it a couple times. But I think it's really important right now for everyone in their own space to be creating educational opportunities if they can, because it's easy. Honestly, as if you're a well-connected person, if you have had some experience and knowledge in this industry, it's very easy for you to create these opportunities for people to learn. It just takes a little bit of effort. And honestly, people volunteer to help me. That's how I do it. I don't do it all by myself. I have pickup locations, and on the west side we had somebody at Del Frisco's who's a som there. She generously like took like 15 flights with her back over there, and people in Malibu and stuff. I'm trying to make it a little easier, but if you request support, people are there. And man, people really want to learn right now, I'm telling you. So this is a good time to to help out your fellow soms.
Totally. And that sense of community again is just such an amazing thing how everyone's really coming together to support one another. So I guess I am also curious if you have any tips or advice for people who aren't necessarily professionals in the wine community for where they might turn or look to if they want to engage in a tasting group format like that. Do you have any suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, all you need really is 8 to 10 people that want to taste wine, really. And I would honestly go on Facebook groups. I would go on Facebook groups or start your own Facebook group. I started this LA Som community Facebook group at the kind of at the beginning of the pandemic, and just people flock from all over, and I meet so many new people. I think that people are really engaged on Facebook, even though I don't actually post on Facebook very often, but I'm there for the groups. And as an admin of several groups myself, I can see how many people look at the posts. And if I have 130 people in a group, I usually have over 100 people that have seen it,
Yeah.
which is super high engagement. So I think that's the space. If you want to create something, speak it out into the universe and people will come. They come out of everywhere. You just have to speak it, and yeah, you'll attract what you want.
Cristie, I think you're a superb example of projecting out into the universe and speaking it out and seeing what comes back and doing amazing things with it. You're definitely an inspiration, and I want to thank you so much for your time and everything that you're doing in the wine space right now to keep everyone, moving along as best as we can during these crazy times.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it. It's an honor to be on that list. I thought it was a phishing scam when you guys first sent me the email. That's why I didn't respond. I'm not lying. I was like the last person to get my photo done because I did not respond for a long time. And I texted like Julia Connie and all these people, like, is this real? Matt Caner, is this real? And they said, yeah. So I was very surprised. But I really do appreciate it. And we have a lot of work to do. And this is just the beginning, at least for me, for sure.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time and for responding to the email. And we're excited to see what else comes out from the courses to the tasting classes to the USF and everything that you're doing. So thank you.
Appreciate you, Lauren.
Need a break from the news? We're very excited to tell you about an all new podcast from our partner site, Thirsty Nest, the first wine and spirits registry for the modern couple. This podcast is called Can I Buy You a Drink? And on it, founder Jackie Strum will interview wine and wedding industry up-and-comers about their very own meet-cute stories and their path to finding the one. It's a dreamy break from all the scary headlines that will warm your cold, cold heart. So check out Can I Buy You a Drink? From the Thirsty Nest team on Apple Podcasts, Stitcher, or any other podcast platform you prefer. For our next installment on the 40 Under 40 podcast series, we're here today talking to the wine MVP, Will Blackmon. Will, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. This is exciting. This is fun and terrifying at the same time, but more fun than terrifying.
I love it. It's a perfect mix. It makes a great interview. So let's get to it. So, this episode, we're looking to talk about new spaces in the drinks world and what exactly that means, and what sort of new ground and new territory are we covering in this currently crazy upside down world, but a beautifully evolving world of wine and drinks culture. So I thought that you were a perfect person to have on and talk about this because, again, the wine MVP, you're sort of on the cutting edge of a lot of new content curation and opportunities to bring consumers into the world of wine in a very exciting and new way. And I wanted to get your take on how this all sort of came about and what it means to you. So, to start off, tell me a little bit about yourself and how you came into the world of wine.
Yeah, I'm from back east. I'm from Providence, Rhode Island. Small area there. I was introduced to wine just by watching my father drink it. that's how that's how I
Ditto.
knew it. Yeah, which is funny, and yeah, and that's how I saw it. And I was like, okay, that's what my dad enjoys, what have you. So then, as I got older, towards senior year in college, my roommates and I, we enjoyed it at the time. We had, wines that I can't even remember that we would drink. But I did remember I used to love Vino Verde. It was Casal Garcia. That's probably the only wine label that I will ever remember. Hopefully not, but I enjoyed that one a lot. It was $7. It was kind of semi-sweet and had a little bit of, sparkling to it as well. My interest didn't really grow until I got drafted to the Packers in 2006, to the Green Bay Packers. And that same year, we signed Charles Woodson, who is someone, before playing with him, is someone whose game I admired and really loved watching him play. And we played the same position, defensive back. And just hanging out with him, going to dinners or whatever, is when I found out not only did he enjoy wine, but he was also in the wine business himself. And I thought that was super fascinating because, like most consumers or most new consumers of wine, you think that this is a field or realm that belongs to someone else, that's untouchable, that, players like me or people like me just, like, how do you even get into that space? And when I found out that he was not only a phenomenal football player, but that he was doing this, I was like, man, that is super cool. And he would take the whole group to dinners when we would go on road trips, and we would enjoy like really nice wines. I didn't know what they were. I just knew they were expensive. And that's kind of how just my general knowledge was. I feel like I was the main consensus. At the time, I loved sweet white wines and red blends, right? Fruity red blends, because, wasn't too structured where it was too bitter or too tannic. I didn't really understand or appreciate those at the time. What really was the catalyst for me to acquire a lot of knowledge on that side is, this is a funny story. I would go to a lot of corporate events in Wisconsin at the time, and a buddy of mine who was a real important man in Milwaukee, he enjoyed Burgundy, right? He was like, oh man, he said, Burgundy is the best. Like, this is wonderful. And I would try it. I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, this is good. Like, yeah, like, I'm like, it tastes good, cool. And, and I was also around a group of people that will swirl on the wine and telling me how to evaluate it, telling me what the legs mean. And
Sure.
come to find out, everybody was full of it. Once I really knew the truth, once I knew the truth about this stuff. And so a week later, I go to a restaurant by myself, and I get the wine list, and I'm looking for Burgundy. At this time, I'm thinking Burgundy is a brand.
Oh.
Okay. So I'm looking up, I know. So I'm looking for Burgundy. Like, where is this damn brand? I can't find it. And I see the section that says Burgundy. I'm like, okay, this probably here it is. I open it, and there's like 40 different wines. I'm like, what the hell is this? You know? And so I'm like, all right, let me just pick one of them. So I picked it, and then the sommelier brings the wine, drops it off, and he starts to walk away. And I raise my hand. I'm like, sir. He's like, yeah. I said, this is not Burgundy. He goes, what do you mean? I said, it's white. He's like, yeah, I know. He's like, yeah, it is. I'm like, dude, no, it's not. I had Burgundy like a week ago. This is not it. He goes, and like we had this like mini argument. He goes, okay, listen. He starts explaining to me like Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, the two main grapes. It was white, Chardonnay, whatever. And I was like, wow, okay. And that's when I was like, okay, French wines is a different ball game. And that really sparked my interest to go ahead and study. And I went on wine business. I went on, your guys' site. I looked at everybody's magazine and tried to figure out my own. And that just didn't work. Is wine is so hard to study on your own. I wasn't really big on that. And
Yeah.
it wasn't until who's good friends of mine now, Jason and Christina Wise, when they came out with Psalm, the documentary. And that's where I really saw a whole different way of evaluating and understanding wine. It was a straight format on how to do that. And that's kind of where, I was like, man, I want to be able to learn something like that. And fortunately, MS Peter Neptune, he has a wine school about where I live in Orange County that offers the W set. And so right after my off season in 17, I went right over there and took that damn class because I was so fired up and ready to like learn some stuff. And then I jumped right to level 2 and ended up passing that with merit. And ever since I did that, that changed everything I thought about wine.
That's awesome. That's a whole new playbook that you had to dive into that like I can't even imagine.
It was a new sport. Straight up.
Yeah.
It was a whole new sport because there's different languages and terminologies. It's different, like I can learn new playbooks because at least it's within the same field, but this is a whole different sport. It reminds me of when I lived in England for 2 months last year, and they were trying to get me to learn cricket. I was like, whoa, this is this. Oh yeah, because they're like heroes over there in the cricket world. I'm like, man, I'm trying to understand that, And it was. I remember in college, I would watch like field hockey games. I was like, why is the whistle keep blowing? Why, like, why can't they just play? So, but it was cool, and what really made it cool and became a passion for me was because so how I fell in love with football, my dad had all these old films and VHS tapes, and I would watch those and really look at the people who paved the way for the game and the history of the game, how it was made. And I was like, man, this is super cool. I want to be an NFL player when I grow up, And then it was kind of the same thing watching Psalm and watching these documentaries and seeing history and how it was made and all this stuff. And I was like, damn, dude, that would be so cool to be in that world. I was never one that I fell in love with the luxurious lifestyle. Like, yeah, that's cool. But I really love like the deep down, like the heart of wine and where it comes from, how it's made, how it changed people's life, how it changed history, the wars and all that stuff. I think that's super fascinating.
Sure, it's not necessarily the more hedonistic aspect of it, if you will, or the pleasurable aspect. And while that's nice, it's more, like you said, the sport and the stories and the craftsmanship and the skill behind it all. I mean, there's a lot relating the world of sports and the worlds of wine. And I could see how you would make that connection and form that sort of partnership without even realizing it. So tell me, you took the WSET class in 2017, you said, in your off season?
I believe so. It's
Okay.
somewhere around
So
here. Yeah.
how long after that did you like go from dipping the toe into the pool to full on swimming? Like how did that progression go to where you are today in terms of your involvement in now the wine world?
I'll tell you what, W set is swimming. Okay, that's a 400-meter butterfly race for those who swim. Um, that was not easy by any means. But what was cool about that, though, that really was the catalyst because as soon as we got back, as soon as I got back to DC when I was playing for the Redskins, now Washington football team, it's about they're in Ashburn. It's about 15 minutes from Leesburg, Virginia, and there's a bunch of wineries in Leesburg, in Northern Virginia. And right after we had practice, and right after practice, I remember I bought like boots to work in a vineyard, and I would drive to Leesburg to Fabioli Cellars, and he would let me hang out and just be in the vineyard and be in the cellar, be everywhere around the tanks and the vats and do stuff because I really wanted to get my hands dirty and understand viticulture. And I mean, there was my first day. I remember it was pouring, raining, and I kind of looked at it as a sign. I was like, okay, if I don't come while it's raining, he's not going to take me serious. It's kind of a test, which is probably me hyping my own self out, which was probably never something he even thought of. But anyhow, I'm like, this is probably a test, and I'm driving in the rain, and then usually wineries when you drive to them, it's all dirt, and I just remember I just had a brand new car. I spoiled myself and got a Maserati and driving that through the mud and rocks and gravel. And damn it, I made it, and was trying to let him know, like, I'm here because I really want to learn. I really want to be successful and understand this whole business. So that's where it really, in there. I was not just swimming, I was, you know, deep water fishing.
Did you have to clean out any tanks?
I did not. I was actually helping planting because he was doing custom crush and growing for people. So he got some new vines to help trim and sort and all that stuff. So that's really what I did. I did not clean any tanks. No.
Nice.
Yeah.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about how you came into your collaborative partnership with the Wine Exchange and how you came up with the whole premise for the Wine MVP program with them. So again, tell me a little bit about that partnership and what exactly that idea and that concept is today.
So yeah, how it originally came about, I initially wanted to have my own wine label, like most people. Like that's what I wanted. I thought that was the
Like
cool,
Charles.
like Charles, like Drew Bledsoe, like everybody. Exactly. Like all these guys have their own wine labels, and I asked all of my mentors and people I knew in the wine industry who've been around forever. They were like, "You can have the best grapes, you can have the best winemaker, the best vineyard, the best product." They said, "You still have to be able to move it. You still have to be able to sell the wine. And if you don't sell the wine, then you're stuck with a bunch of wine and you're not making any money." And I was like, "Okay, well, if that's the case, let me learn the retail side." And a close friend of mine, his name is Phil Schwalbe, he recommended I go speak to Tristan and Kyle at the Wine Exchange. Those are his good friends. He's known for years. So I go over there and I walk in. It's just funny. This football player walks in. He's like, "Can I intern here and learn some prices?" They're like, "I guess so." Like, "Go ahead, dude." They're like, "Whatever you want to do, man." So I'm literally in this store for hours, like 4 hours, just looking at prices, and kind of looking at who's buying what, and it's the weirdest case study that I have done, and I did it like 2 days in a row, and then by the third day, I remember they asked me to come to the office, and I literally thought I did something wrong because I was taking pictures like all these prices in the bottle, so I was like, "Oh shoot, maybe like I'm getting in trouble. Maybe they think I'm a maybe they think I'm a spy for like Wally's or somebody, comparing prices." So that so they I went to the back and I was like, "Damn, dude, I'm just ready to lay it on me." And they say, "Hey man, what do you want to do?" I said, "I want to have my own wine label." They go, "Well, you already have like friends that you help pick out stuff for and what have you." They're like, "Yeah." They go, "You should probably facilitate that, be more of like on the concierge side." Kind of speaking of Wally's, they mentioned like Christian Navarro to me, like what he does in LA. And
Sure.
I'm like, "Yeah, that's easy to talk to guys, but to actually get them to understand what I'm doing is the difficult part." And so I started doing that. I started, curating, high-end wines for friends and former teammates and stuff like that, especially around COVID. I've started doing wine cellars because everyone's at home.
Sure.
And that's when I created a handle called NFL Wine Guy. And I thought it was super cool and catchy, and I had to because I would talk about wine on my main Twitter handle with Blackmon, and nobody like gave a damn. They were like, "Dude, shut up and talk about football because we don't care about wine. Like, we drink beer and whiskey. Like, get out of here." I'm like, "Well, I do. It is Wine and Spirits Education Trust." They're like, "Yeah, dude, shut up." Anyhow, so I created NFL Wine Guy, and immediately about 2,000 people shifted over there, and I'm like, "Okay, I have a crowd. I can facilitate this crowd." And I was trying to create some kind of club or whatever, just a community to talk about wine. So a buddy of mine, his name is Mike Jones, and he called me. He's like, "Hey, I want to pitch I pitched a story to my boss about writing a story about you, about NFL player who's, becoming a sommelier, if you will." And I'm like, yeah, cool. Come on out. I'll take you through my day and what I do, and let's do it. So he came out, did the story. The next week, he called me to like fact check, like to go over some things before he released his story. I'm like, yeah, sounds good. The info looks good. Release a story. The next day, and this is important. That's why I'm going like backtracking. The next day, my phone is literally going through the roof. I'm like ready to throw this thing in the middle of the street because I'm like, why are so many people calling me right now? You know, unless it's teams trying to get me back to play football, which I doubt it. Like, why is my phone going off? I thought somebody was in trouble, but come to find out, I thought he wrote the article for The Athletic and it was going to be a column online. He put it on the front page of USA Today Sports.
Huh.
And when that happened, I mean, I got people from Burgundy, people from Bordeaux, Stan Kroenke, who owns Screaming Eagle. Like everyone is calling me to like, hey, what's going on? So that really hit the catalyst. Like, man, I need to move. I need to
Wow.
get something because I was like, oh, I'll probably launch something sometime later, mid 2000, 2020, and I was like, no, I need to do something next week. And
Yeah.
I spoke to the NFL about NFL Wine Guy, and because of the acronym NFL, and I knew there would be some licensing things. So I was like, okay, let me rethink this, and that's where myself and our creative director Patrick Meyer came up with the Wine MVP, and just thought it was universal for all sports. Because maybe guys would think, oh, NFL Wine Guy, he just talked to NFL guys, but no, this
True.
is I thought the Wine MVP worked across every platform, genre, whatever it is, and that's when I started doing more of the personal concierge side. But I'm like, you know what? Everyone is not going to buy these high end bottles. Everyone's not going to spend 100 and up on wine. So how can I create some kind of uh, way that they can have access to these premium wines that's reasonable and have some educational piece attached to it? And that's where I came up with the Wine AP subscription club. And in order for me to have access to wine immediately, my license would have taken forever. It would have cost me a fortune to do all the distribution, overhead, all that stuff. So it was wise for me to partner with someone like the Wine Exchange to be my vendor partner, so I can get the wine fulfillment from them. And they've been around for 30 years. They're great advisors to me, and also I have direct access to a lot of distributors and importers when I'm being associated with them.
Definitely makes a lot of sense. And I love the story actually about the name because I think that not only is it a great point that you're saying you wanted to be, inclusive of all sports and all preferences, but it also, I love that you're presenting the idea that everybody can be an MVP. It's not necessarily just about you, right? You're
Right.
trying to make everyone a wine MVP through your subscription box and through the educational opportunities. You're trying to bring them along on this ride with you.
That's exactly what it is. This is not a situation where it's I'm the teacher, you're the student. This is not anything superior. This is honestly, like let's do this together. Let's learn together. Let's understand this whole thing. Let's if you give me if you don't like it 90%, but you give me 1% to convince you, then let's try this. And I feel like the more people will understand it, the more inclined they are to try it. It goes back to what we just talked about, like cricket. I knew nothing about cricket. I knew a little bit where I'm enough to be curious and will want to know more because it's such a great game and people celebrate it. So now I'm more curious as opposed to feeling excluded, and I want people to be more curious and feel included. And so that's why I'm big on, no, we're not going to have our pinkies up. We're not going to exclude people. We're not going to say this is not for you. This is for everyone. It's just fermented grape juice. Relax. But no, but there's still some cool stuff. It's still a passport in a glass, is what I tell people. Like, man, you can learn so much and you can go places. You'll be more inclined to want to go somewhere just based off of wine. And that's really what I'm doing. When I'm passionate about something, I want to share that passion. It's like I coach football too, on the side. And I coach the same way that I thought was beneficial, like understanding strategy, situation football. It's not all about who can run the fastest. It's like, no, here, understand the game as a whole grand scheme of things. Same thing in wine is not who can buy the most expensive wine. It's like, no, understand all of wine because yes, first growth. There's some great first growth, but there are some rocking fifth growth. There are some rocking wines in Bordeaux you ain't never heard of. that you can get for way less.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. Josh Allen, who plays quarterback for the Buffalo Bills, he asked me like, what can I get him? I was like, whatever you want to spend, I can find you something really rad for $30 or something rad for 3,000 is whatever you want to get. So that's kind of, that's my whole vibe and approach. It's like, I really want it to be approachable and consumer. I feel like, not that I feel like, I know that my place in this is to truly just mend that gap between those who truly don't understand it. Let's say, okay, millennials, that's the demographic. They don't understand. They enjoy luxury goods. Like they're driving Teslas, they get in Louis Vuitton, they get in Gucci, they get in all these high end brands. But when it comes to wine, is like either the brand's too old, the brand's too rich, it's too stuffy, they don't know, and it's like, no, that's not the key. That's just how the message is being brought to you.
Right.
Come to the Wine VP where the message is different. It's the same product, the message is different, and it's still fun and cool. And I think that's what makes the club unique. I'm putting in classic brands like Spotswoods, Catena, things like that, which been around for over hundreds of years, 100 years to be exact for each, and but they're still super cool and rocking. So
That's right. It's all about having the information, making it accessible, making it digestible, and allowing people, again, the information and the opportunity to make their own choices for whatever they're comfortable with and whatever their personal preferences. And that goes for varieties and stylistic preferences as well as price points and budgets. So the subscription box, and I have to assume that you've had a lot of success, especially over this past year. I mean, it's a very timely model, and offering for a lot of consumers to get into right now. Can you tell me a little bit about how you've seen business shift over this past year?
well, yeah, it's actually been fun. It's funny because I mentioned that at first I was doing just wine cellar, inventory, like Matt Ryan, the QB for the Falcons. I did his cellar, Reggie Bush, um, and Justin Tuck, just to name a few. But then we launched the subscription club right in the middle of all this,
Mm.
where everyone is home and has to order stuff. So yeah, there's two premium wines for 79.98 shipping included, and I just think it's done well, and especially how I'm really going at this at a really slow rate. Like I'm not doing a ton of advertising. I haven't spent any money on advertising. It's all social media because I really want to create this in a way where it's sustainable for a long time. Like people will see, like I'm not doing, you know, I'm not oversaturating people with all my content. I'm not, collabing with everybody in the world. And for some people that works. I have nothing against it. I'm just saying that's not the style that I'm going for because
Right.
I still want to keep the integrity with the brand. I don't want to get everybody excited and then have them be over me within, the next few months.
Well,
So
that's what
it's
feels authentic to you, right?
exactly. So I'm going bit by bit, piece by piece. Eventually, maybe sometime around the holidays, release a second tier. And stuff like that, like slowly growing the brand um, on its own, and that's what's been going on. So for the fact that where we are now, um, due to circumstances and how little we're doing, I'm very happy.
Nice. So you talked a little bit about possible opportunities in the future in terms of maybe another tier or an expanded box. Do you want to maybe share anything else that you might have, ideas or hopes or dreams for in the future in terms of, again, this sort of evolving nature of the current wine landscape?
Yeah, so yeah, just a way to keep enhancing and building the wine community. I became a partner in this startup aviation company called J3Jet. It was founded by Joe Dashant, who's aviation businessman here in Orange County. And basically, in Napa, they have one FBO, which is a fixed base operator, and it's basically a private jet company, private jet airport, in other words, a gas station for private planes. And uh, that's no, it's funny because I was learning that side, and it's like, yeah, we're basically a gas station if you really think about it. And they voted last year to open up a second one, and that's when Joe created the company to go ahead and submit a proposal to win the second one. And he brought me on board because it's in Napa, and I have relationships with wineries in Napa. And the biggest thing that we have going is JSX, Jet Suite X, is a semi-private plane owned by the CEO is Alex Wilcox, and he fully is on our side, saying that we win his FBO, then we can have his planes go inbound and outbound direct from Orange County to Napa. And the reason why this is great is because obviously due to what's going on, the visitation is not the same in Napa right now. And the ones that are there are either the locals, which doesn't mean much because come to find out, locals aren't the ones spending money. It's visitors. I think 75% of revenues from visitation. And, this is a situation. Oh yeah. And also the ones that are there from out of town are the ones that have the means to do so. So this is a situation where it's a semi-private plane. You're not going through the airport where you're around so many people, and it's direct from Orange County to Napa. And this is a way to get people directly to Napa, because right now on site, and I was just there a few weeks ago, on site is not the same. Yes, DTC, everyone's doing well, selling online and what have you, but these wineries want people in person so that they can, get them in the wine club. And I think this is a fantastic way to do so. And so I was meeting with all these wineries, and they all found this of value for them. So that's the next venture. Part of this is what I'm hoping for, man. It's the biggest thing is I just want to add to this. I'm not trying to be the alpha male in the business, trying to take over and, be dominant and just rule over everybody. I think this community is so fun and great connections, and there's just so many avenues to it. It's like, man, if I can just be part and help, that's all I want to do, man. I'm in this with no ego, which is why I'm putting in the work, learning the education side. I'm in Sonoma State Business School right now, learning the business side of the wine business, and just continue to grow. And because this is part two, this is my new career, this is my new passion. So this is not a hobby. This is real deal. This is life.
And I think that again, that authenticity and that intent really comes through. And that's why I think you've had so many people so far join you on the ride. So, Will, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. And we wish you much, much continued success. We can't wait to see what happens next with the Wine MVP.
No, totally. Thank you so much. It's an honor. It's super cool just to be mentioned. I think when we first spoke and you told me the news, I was like, dude, that's so funny, because when I saw Derek on the cover 2 years ago, I kept that magazine cover, and I was like, dude, this is before I even like launched anything. I just had ideas. I was like, this would be so cool just to even be like mentioned in this thing. I don't know how to do it. I'm just gonna go, and then here we are. It's cool.
Figured it out. The new class of 40 under 40.
There it is.
Awesome. Will, thank you again.
No, thank you so much.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Wine Enthusiast podcast. It's hard to deny the passion and energy those two have for wine, and feel inspired by their efforts to bring more people along into this delicious world to experience their own wonderful wine journeys too. From classes to tastings to wine clubs and beyond, there's a whole host of ways to become more engaged in your vinous explorations and education, and no better time than today to dive on in. Be sure to visit winemag.com/podcast for more about these opportunities, as well as more on Cristie and Will and the initiatives that drive them. You can also read more about all of our 40 Under 40 Tastemakers of 2020 online, or by picking up a copy of the October issue out now. Subscribe to the Wine Enthusiast podcast on iTunes, Google Play, or wherever you find podcasts. And if you like today's episode, we'd love to read your review and hear what you think. And hey, why not tell your wine-loving friends to check us out too? You can also drop us a line at podcast@winemag.com. For more wine reviews, recipes, guides, deep dives, and stories, visit Wine Enthusiast online at winemag.com and connect with us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter at Wine Enthusiast. The Wine Enthusiast podcast is produced by Lauren Buzzio and Jenny Groza. Until next episode, cheers.